What's good on YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Kamen Rider Build episode 40. This episode was really good. The episode is called The Final Revolution, and some pretty exciting things and interesting things do occur in this episode overall. The episode begins with us finally seeing the continuation of Sento using the genius form. So it's really cool to see that. What we do end up seeing initially is that he actually uses the abilities from it, which come in different forms. So for example, he has these sides to his outfit, and when he uses the first attack, it's the genius attack, and it leads to him using one side. Then if he does it again, he uses the other side, and it allows him to use genius break. And what we can assume, but we don't actually see this episode until the end, is that both sides, because at first you don't know for a fact, but it is true that yes, the third one, which allows for both sides, is the genius finish. So we do end up seeing genius break and genius attack used against Mad Rogue, and what ends up happening is that eventually Mad Rogue is teleported out by Vexento, but Vexento, before he leaves, he actually goes and grabs Kazumi's bottles that he had from the Hokuto trio. Yes, he uses those bottles because those bottles will be used to create the lost bottles that can be used for a very important thing that we learn of in this episode. So from here, what we do end up seeing is that they return back to the base. Everyone's kind of curious as to whether or not Sento really does have all his memories back. What we do end up learning is that he does remember a number of things, but he only remembers things up to the point of high school. So he doesn't know things leading up to the Skywall incident, but he knows up to high school for his father, and then he knows what he knew as Sento. So that's definitely an improvement. I mean, obviously there's still some stuff in between there, which is the most important stuff probably overall that is missing, but again, we'll have to wait and see what does end up happening, because eventually we should end up learning like that information, which is pretty critical overall. And some of the information he still somehow has that is important to remember. Now, what does end up happening eventually is that what do you call it? Gentaku decides to arrive because he's been not around or anything, and also they're just curious as to why he would need the lost bottles, Vexento. And the thing is that he doesn't really remember much. He knows that the lost bottles were made by his father. That is something that he knew for a fact was the case. But he didn't know what he would want them for and what they could be really used for, because that never was discussed with him. And the other thing is that even if he had that data from the past, the thing was that Vexento is assumed to have actually erased any of that data that was on the database that they had. So even if he wanted to find the information that he was looking for about the lost bottle, he wouldn't be able to find it so easily through the database that they have. So what does end up happening is that eventually Gentaku arrives. He arrives in this kind of really ugly outfit that makes him look very casual, very informal, unlike his typical formal dress clothes that he wears throughout the entire season, which definitely shows that he's going for a more like, just kind of relaxed, taking it easy, I'm just having fun personality, which is definitely a change for him, and I'm respecting that completely. I think that it's a great thing for him to kind of take a back seat and just kind of change his whole personality a little bit. Is it my favorite look that he gives? No. And again, this is not his final outfit that he's gonna be wearing. This is him testing out what kind of look he can do that's more casual rather than the more business attire that he typically wears, which is perfectly fine. And in fact, Mizora is the one that constantly is like, oh, it's an awful outfit, and they kind of go back and forth, Gentaku and Mizora, which I kind of like the fact that there is that sort of relationship going on here where they're arguing over that kind of stuff, just because it's just interesting to see them interacting with each other, because typically Gentaku's been seen as this dark and intimidating figure, but in this case it's about like fashion and clothing, and it's kind of nice to see Mizora kind of going against his thoughts and everything and not being intimidated by him, but instead having him like not realize what he's doing is wrong with his outfits, but at the same time still being able to go back and forth with her. Like, it's kind of an interesting situation that comes about here. Now what we do end up seeing from here is that eventually we end up having this conversation, and again, this might be a little out of order. There is a point where Sento decides to go to look outside and view some water. We end up seeing that Kazumi wants to go back to where Hokuto is, to maybe find some information and maybe get the Hokuto bottles. And the thing is that Sento is perfectly a fan of actually doing this, because he wants to go back to his home to see if he can find information on his father and just in general look around, while also trying to be careful of avoiding Faust in its current state. So what does end up happening is that from here, Sento and Kazumi end up going off. What we do end up seeing is that in the meantime, Ryoga gives Kazumi a present, which is like a bottle. We don't know which bottle it is, but we'll probably see it soon enough. What we do end up seeing, and it might actually be what I'm thinking it is, I honestly don't remember for a fact. So what we do end up seeing as well is that in the meantime, we end up learning about the Lost Smash, which you may think to yourself, like, what do you mean Lost Smash? So the lost bottles, as we know, are these mysterious bottles. They're bottles that have already been in the show but have a different form. They have a form that Evolto is able to unleash. And what happens is that we end up learning about these things called Lost Smash. They're basically the strongest form of the Smash that exists. So we've had different forms of them in the past. We've had Hard Smash, we've had just the standard Smash, we've had Lost Smash now. Lost Smash, basically the way that they work is that you take a clone Smash and you take a lost bottle and then you combine it with a person to create a Lost Smash. Basically, the big difference between the Lost Smash and also just in general what the lost bottles do is that they lead to aggressive behavior that can be very dangerous potentially. But specifically in the cases of what a Lost Smash leads to is that basically it creates a person that is extremely aggressive, like beyond aggressive, with like extremely high hazard level, and on top of that they're very easy to manipulate, yet at the same time you have to be able to actually get to them in time to actually manipulate them. So in other words, if you don't take control of them and learn how to manipulate them, they're not going to do it to begin with. Again, you have to build that trust and be able to forge that kind of stuff for them to actually work with you. But it is an interesting thing to consider, of course. So what we do end up seeing is that eventually they're actually creating their first Lost Smash, which leads to one person screaming out inside the chambers where they're exposing her to intense nebula gas. So yes, nebula gas is being used. She's screaming in terror, and it's someone that we've known before, but we haven't seen her in quite some time. And it was kind of interesting to see her and see what actually happens with her character in this episode, because it leads to a lot of things in a way, because we learned something very important about Sento's genius form from her, and we'll get to that towards the end here. So what does end up happening in the meantime is that Sento decides to go off into the home of where he lived, which seems kind of odd because he knows that, because like no one's there, like there's no clear idea that maybe his mother was there or anything like that, so there's no interaction. He just kind of snoops in, finds information in a closet that has files for his dad. One thing that falls out of the case is actually a postcard that shows a picture of the girl that actually gave Ryoga and Sawa a ride when they went to get the data from Hokuto the first time around. So what actually happens is that I believe it was those two, and what happens is is that they end up realizing when they see the picture that it has a guardian in it. And the thing is that the guardians didn't exist till, I think it was like 5 years after the Skywall disaster happened. And yet the thing was is that after the Skywall, 6 months after the Skywall disaster happened, Katsuragi's father was believed to have died. And the thing is that it clearly implies that the picture that they have is something that's fairly recent, meaning that it couldn't have been something from 6 months, it could have been something from before he died, because it wouldn't have a guardian in it. That's the important thing. Guardians are believed to not have exist, before then. So it obviously leads to a big suspicion, which you can kind of connect the dots there that something's going on, because why would an image feature the Guardians if they haven't existed for all that time? And I'm sure that Sento probably has rationalized this, but at the same time he's probably not completely convinced that it's all true. But at the same time, he does end up sending Ryoga the information so that he can go and look into it with Sawa. And in the meantime, we also see that Mizora and Gentaku are still fighting over clothing. And this time, he actually chooses a different outfit, tries to pose and tries to be, very, fashion, focused on his fashion designs and everything like that. And it's an ugly outfit again, and it's just really funny to see their interactions. In the meantime, what we do end up seeing is that Kazumi ends up going to head to Faust. He heads in there. He actually sees all 3 of the lost bottles that he was looking for, and what happens is that eventually he's wearing the outfits that several of the people that are trying to prevent themselves from being exposed to nebula gas are wearing, but he ends up being caught and actually revealed to be himself. So then at this point, what happens is that Tsumi decides to put him into one of the chambers, exposing him to intense nebula gas, bringing his hazard level up to its peak level, where it's super, super high. And what this leads to is that he ends up also gaining the nebula gas strength that would allow him to be manipulated like a Lost Smash. Yet he doesn't actually utilize a Lost Smash bottle. At least we haven't seen that so far. So what does end up happening is that Utsumi explains that if he dies, if he loses in battle, his body will be destroyed. That is the current state of affairs, meaning that a Lost Smash could potentially die, but he's also vulnerable to obviously being manipulated, which at this time he isn't manipulated by Utsumi, and he actually decides to run away, retreat with the he retreats away. I forget if he actually gets any of the Hokuto bottles, but what we do end up seeing is that I think he does. So then following this, he ends up fighting some Guardians and getting out of the building. Eventually, he is confronted by the Hokuto Prime Minister. And the thing is that she has with her 2 clone smashes. Yes, she is that first Lost Smash. And if you're wondering, there's still 3 other bottles, because there's 4 initially, if not more. And the thing is that the other ones, Evolto, the reason why he was letting the Sento, Ryoga, Gentaku, and and Kazumi live was because he wanted to turn them into Lost Smash so he can manipulate them and allow them to destroy the world, so he can use the forces of good for evil and have them be this manipulative force that's extremely aggressive. So he's really just trying to take advantage of them and make them his ultimate warriors. Kind of an interesting concept. But anyway, what we do end up seeing is that from here, she ends up using a bottle. She inserts it into her neck, and what happens is that suddenly the 2 clone smashes join together and combine with her, as well as the bottle that goes into her, and they make the they basically make the Owl Smash, the one that, but with this kind of hazard form, like the hazard form of the Owl Smash, which we did see that form, but in this case it's way more powerful because it should have like the Law Smash rank, which is like the strongest Smash form that there is. So again, we're seeing the Law Smash form, and we're seeing all these things coming together. Also, at the same time, Kazumi's having to fight it, which is important because, you know, that's the form of one of his comrades that he lost. So, again, that's kind of hard for him to deal with. At the same time, as he's dealing with this figure, he ends up also being helped by Sento, who ends up coming over in the Rabbit mode to help and fight. Initially, things are going okay, but you know, he's still kind of annoyed that Kazumi decided to get involved in this battle. But then from here, what we do end up seeing is that he ends up trying to convince him to continue to fight and, you know, fight for those you care about and everything. And he gets beaten back, like to the point where he could potentially lose his body, but he decides to continue and fight on, and he uses a second dragon jelly to you know, a dragon jelly splash bottle or whatever, to actually have double, like 2 twin breakers, so that he can use both of them at once, and that's his power-up form. Now, as far as like an actual like design or anything kind of cool, because people were hoping, like when they heard that there was going to be like a power-up form for him, that it would be something that would be very visual. It wouldn't just be like attachments, which is really more of like an upgrade to his weaponry, but not really like a power-up to the same extent. Yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, if you're wondering if there's any chance by the end of the season for him to maybe get another form, you never know. There's only 10 episodes left, so the chances are pretty slim now, but maybe they'll somehow sneak something in. I'm pretty doubtful at this point, with probably 10 episodes, like 8 to 10 episodes being left for the season, so just keep that in mind. Is it a possibility? Yes, but I'm not expecting it. So anyway, what does end up happening is that eventually Sento decides to transform into the Genius form after transforming into the Tank form, and with the Genius form he actually decides to use a finisher after beating back her, and with his finisher he does the Genius finish, and the special ability of his form is that he's able to actually take control of the he's able to neutralize the nebula gas within a person, which is very important because not only does it actually neutralize it so that she manages to live after she is defeated, which means that yes, so she's alive, she doesn't get destroyed and, you know, completely falls apart, she actually is still alive. But what happens is that eventually when Kazumi wakes her up, she begins to cry and apologize for everything that she's done. And it's clear that what that could also mean is that you know, everyone that was at the Skywall incident was affected by, you know, the energy from the Pandora's box. And what that could mean is that obviously that energy was nebula gas, and maybe when he did that, he basically got rid of her dark half that had existed and had formed from as early as the Skywall incident, meaning that she returned to being good. You know, she became a good character now, which is an interesting thing and definitely something to consider and a great possibility. Again, not 100% sure if that's exactly what happened, but if I had to guess, that's what I would assume is what occurred, and I actually do like that idea overall. It definitely brings up the idea that things will continue to get even more interesting as he eventually manages to purify even more characters such as Utsumi. Maybe he'll even purify Ivalto himself. Maybe he'll purify Suichi. Again, Suichi I'm sure has had some exposure. We'll have to wait and see as to how everything will work, but yeah, no, it's definitely looking like a very interesting thing. Eventually Volto does appear, and he is impressed with the fact that Sento was able to neutralize the nebula gas from a Law Smash, but at the same time he ends up retreating with Mad Rogue, who does end up attacking at one point. I do remember that. And eventually what we do end up seeing is that following all this, when the Prime Minister is going to go back with Kazumi to, go to a hospital and get recovered or whatever, we end up seeing that Sawa and Ryoga end up confronting the woman that gave them that ride that one time. And what happens is that when they mention Katsuragi's father, she says, "Oh yeah, I just gave him a ride this past week or something like that," she said. And the thing is that what that basically implied is that he's still alive. Yes, Katsuragi's father is still alive. And what we do see in the preview is that, first of all, they'll be focused towards Suichi. So Suichi will likely come back, or something will occur in that way. Mizoro we'll get to see, and we'll also get to see a flashback as to her childhood, which is kind of nice to finally get that kind of information. We do see in the episode that Ivalto, I'm guessing, approaches Katsuragi's father. It's either Ivalto or it could be Suichi as it's either Ivalto as Suichi or Suichi confronting Katsuragi's father. But it should be very interesting to see. I'm very curious as to whether or not his father is going to be a character that will be evil. Will be a character that will be good? Will he have a rider form? I don't know. If anything, he would be the one character at this point that I would imagine could get one, but I'm not expecting it just because we're so late in. But again, there have been characters that have gotten rider forms very, very late. I mean, again, think back to Chronos for Kamen Rider X8 if you ever watched that. That was introduced fairly late into the season, so there's no reason why they couldn't do it, but we'll have to wait and see if they go that way. Again, hard to say for sure. Maybe Ivalto will take control of Katsuragi's father and maybe they'll become one. That's a possibility. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to know your guys' opinions. I know this video was long. A lot of things happened again, so keep that in mind. If you're wondering why this video was this length, it's because of that. So bye bye guys.